Hey, welcome to the show, Jordan. We are up and running here through a little bit of the old Wi-Fi wonders. We are ready to go. Welcome to the show, man.
Oh, absolutely excited to be here. I love the show you got. I love your background. And this is always like my favorite thing. I always feel this kind of need to talk about the podcast host because honestly, it sounds like what you're doing is super cool. Obviously, it's not completely straightforward, but my journey there is basically, I also like to say, kind of the standard journey that a lot of doctors go through, which is the single family. I should even start before the house hack to single family to multifamily to commercial of various types. And now I own Lantern Light Capital. We're a self-storage operations, investment, and management company. So we build and buy self-storage facilities. You sit around the ER, and maybe it's the place that I'm working at right now. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, but I talk to every single ER doctor, and almost, I think there's one out of the 6 or 7 that I work with that isn't involved in business or real estate in some way. And I think that's kind of due to two things. One is the difficulty of emergency medicine as a whole, as a field, and there's a lot of external pressure there, and I guess internal as well. Whole conversation, and then there's also this kind of grittiness and this ability to see the whole picture and to like maneuver that is inherent in our training. So that medical training does offer, and I've always, I don't know if this is an F-bomb kind of podcast, but I've always said F that to the, oh, doctors can't be good business people, because you know what are you talking about? Like, okay, yeah, they didn't get great training, but it's just not true, right? These are some of the smartest, most savvy people. Yeah, they don't like to say that because they're trained to be overly humble, but like, you guys listening to this podcast are high achievers. You are smart people. You do see a bigger picture in medicine, and that does, once you have the basic foundations, translate over to business. And I see that in some of these guys I work with, just really impressive individuals in medicine. And I think this is becoming, look at your podcast, right? This is becoming more and more of a narrative of like, okay, what does it mean to be a physician in 2023 and 2024? And I think there's more to it than just grinding it out in the hospital. And that's where this conversation naturally goes, and that's what I try to put out with a lot of my content towards investors. It's like, okay, you're a doctor, you want to understand the different investments. Well, one way is to get involved, and there's always this like, well, you got to do something, you got to just make that first jump. And yes, I agree. It is always useful. My very first investment in self-storage was a syndication. So as a limited partner, a passive syndication, and I didn't fully understand it, right? Like, I didn't have the understanding I have now, but I jumped in and I got to learn more. I understood the finances. I read the PPM. I read all the documents. I listened to the podcast. I did all that. And it's like, okay, now I feel very confident in so many more things and how investing works. And that gets to my internal strategy, right? So I built this own kind of internal investment strategy as a whole. And to kind of go back to your original statement is like, maybe you said, maybe somebody told me that and I just didn't listen. I don't know. I would, nobody really told me in a reasonable way. There's a lot of ways to teach, and I come from an education background as an academic attending, teaching the residents, and you can say a single sentence that might be incredibly profound, but if somebody doesn't hear it, process it, and understand the framework behind it all, they're not going to take it deep within them. And I think going out there, listening to podcasts, talking to business owners, looking at financials, it can be fun, it can be useful, and there's a little bit of a learning curve at first, but the payoffs are huge, and your understanding of the world as a whole can be huge. And see, my only regret ever with any house that I've ever bought was that I didn't buy a more or buy a bigger one, right? And of course, the whole time in the market thing, right? Instead of timing the market, that trope seems to be fairly true over a decent time scale. So start off with a duplex, actually started off renting a room in it, and now it's a duplex, and then moved on there to another multifamily and another multifamily. And the transition to self-storage was actually, and you know, there's a lot of, you can get into all that stuff. I'll take a brief aside. You can look into the 𝗏 model, right, where you buy these houses and rehab them, and then they're worth more, and then you refinance, right? And you do that again. There's a lot of different ways you can understand these deals. But again, they're not terribly complex once you know how they work. It's just those fundamentals. I would say start by just consuming as much knowledge as possible and then act on it. Because that's really, it's that knowledge that matters so much. Knowledge and then act on it. I don't know another good piece of advice, because it's really hard, because whatever I say, if I come up with this great statement, oh, you know, you need to start small and go big, or you need to focus on fundamentals, what does that mean to somebody who doesn't have that foundation of what we were talking about before, of the basics of business? I think start consuming knowledge would be my one bit of advice.